Measuring an accurate birth time for your child is possibly one of the greatest gifts that you can give them, which will serve them through their whole life, whether they get into human design or any kind of astrology or other system of self-knowledge that uses that information, and ideally down to the nearest second if you can, because as these systems develop and get more sophisticated, certainly in human design, the second is important. There are significant changes that happen within minutes. So if you're watching this, I'm sure you realize the importance of that already. And when we were coming up to the birth of our first boy here, I was getting concerned with how was I going to measure that without being too distracted. To be able to be present with my partner and help her and not have to look at my phone or a clock or my computer constantly. So I asked some of my friends and colleagues, I'm a professional human design analyst, how do you do that? And also, which moment do you measure? That was another confusing question for me. Is it when the head comes out? Is it when the body comes out? I've heard in some traditions it's even when the placenta comes out. So, I thought, well, why not measure all three and then we'll see which one's useful. In human design, the time we measure is when the whole body comes out, when the baby is aurically separate from the mother and therefore exposed completely for the first time to the imprint of the environment. So that's the moment we measure in human design. But I did think at first that it would be when the head comes out, because of course that's where the personality crystal sits, just above your head, looking down. And so I assumed that it would be the moment when the head comes out that the personality crystal gets imprinted by the environment. But no, it's the whole body. And I also didn't realize that between when the head comes out and the body comes out is usually a matter of seconds, unless there's complications. So that was the first question to deal with. And then secondly, how do you do it? How do you measure it? And a couple of people suggested that we video the birth. And that was obviously not going to happen. My partner was not comfortable with that, first of all. And secondly, we did a birth at home. Actually, we planned to do it in a birth center, but in the end, on the day, my Julie preferred to stay at home and not go anywhere else. So we did it in the room next door. And we knew that wherever we were going to do it, she was going to have the freedom to be able to move around and change positions as listening to her body as she felt. And so it would not have been possible to set up a camera anywhere and expect that she go to that place in front of the camera with her legs open, so what an idea. But then as I was thinking, I realized that having audio recorded would be really useful, because then whatever happened, if I didn't manage to see the time in the moment, as long as I had a clock running and also being recorded, then I could listen back to the audio and reference it with the clock being recorded. So I needed to have some kind of really accurate clock and audio being recorded. So I'll show you how I did that on my phone. And basically the clock on your devices is pretty accurate these days. It's updating itself, but it's not going to be as accurate as an atomic clock, right? So I found a free and open source app called Record You on, I don't use Android or Apple. I'm a weirdo and I use Calyx OS on a Google phone, but I'm sure you'll find it at whatever app store you use or some other equivalent. It's basically a screen recorder. So what I could do, I'll show you here, is use the screen recorder to be recording audio from the room, and then open up this atomic clock app called Atomic Time, whatever, This one is great because you can choose which time server you sync it with around the world. And at the same time, split the screen with my phone's clock app so that I could see the two. And as you can see, the atomic time is slightly ahead of my phone's clock, but you know, we're not at the stage in astrology or human design where milliseconds matter that much. But yeah, I mean, if you do that, the other thing that I was concerned with was I didn't want to have the Wi-Fi on. I didn't want to have electromagnetic, you know, disturbance in the room because I'm sensitive to that. Julie's pretty sensitive to that. So maybe it's not important to you, but to me it was important. So to have all the devices on flight mode and phones off. And what happens is that these clock apps need to sync themselves to the server. So what you can do is you just take yourself off flight mode, like I did there, let it sync. And then after 10, 15 seconds, it's going to show server error, that it's out of sync again. But it doesn't matter. It's not going to go out of sync for months. So, you know, that was that done. And so I had my phone with that time and the audio playing on the side. And I also had my laptop because we needed some kind of clock that the midwives could see to also record the time, because they're going to be your biggest ally. So if you can convince them about the importance of measuring not just the minute, but the second, if possible, then in the end, it was one of the midwives who recorded the moment accurately, and I could listen to the audio and reference and check her accuracy to the second. So it worked out that way. But I needed to have a clock, an atomic clock, visible that she could see. So I did that on my laptop, and I'll show you how. So what I did to have the time visible in big on my laptop screen where the midwives could see it was I opened up 3 different time apps. And it's also the reason I did a split screen on my phone with 2 apps, because I'm a third line. Stuff always goes wrong. And just in case one of them stopped working, you know. So I opened up time.is with the local time, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is the US atomic clock. But, you know, whatever ones you find, I opened up a few, and they've also got this widget. And then I put them all together in an OBS window. OBS is a screen recorder, and so it was recording the sound from the room in such a way that I could see all 3 of them, or the midwife could, with the biggest one being visible. And once it was synced, I just used my phone as a hotspot for a few seconds and then turned everything on flight mode. Then we were good to go. And the birth took 7 hours from the start of the really strong contractions. And I've got to say, it was really intense. I mean, we had a lot of these hippie women at the start of the year tell us that their birth was blissful and orgasmic and transcendental, and they do it again every day. But seriously, no, it was intense. And I mean, nature is brutal. It's amazing how the body can do that. I mean, they say if men had to give birth, we'd be extinct. And oh gosh, but yeah, she did it, and he popped out. And a great tip, which I didn't plan for, was one of the midwives did actually take a video of the last moments when he actually popped out. And that I really do recommend for both of you, because it was mind-blowing to watch that afterwards, both for me and for Julie, and to see that she did it. And that video was really helpful for me to double, triple, mega check that the time the midwife wrote down and the time that I could infer from the sound recordings on my phone and computer, they matched up with the actual moment on the video, right? Because I could hear. Anyway, I won't try to imitate the sounds or whatever for you here, but it was really useful to have some kind of video. So I hope that's useful for you. You want to measure the time when the whole body comes out, and well, why not also the time when the head comes out and then the body? But if you're telling your midwife, it's the time when the whole body comes out for the purposes of the human design imprint. And hopefully that also gives you some ideas about how you can have the accurate time in the room for you or your midwife or whoever to keep an eye on. moment comes, and the backup of some recordings. And if you have some other ways of measuring birth time accurately that have worked for you, please do share them in the comments. I would love to know, for everyone's sake. It's something that I've not seen talked about enough, and yet it is the most important thing. You can do birth time rectification for sure, but it's a lot of work. And I think baby bear is starting to wake up and jiggle about, so either gonna check nappy time or titty time. All right, see you next time. Please like, subscribe, and surrender.